I'm Betty Banjack, and this is Look Who's Cooking. And today I have a very, very special guest, Mary Vogel. And Mary is known in the area as the Lavender Lady. And if you were right here with us, you'd know why. All I smell is lavender, and it's wonderful. She has some other herbs too, but it's just a wonderful smell. And Mary said that she would come and share what she knows, which seems to be everything.
Not really.
About lavender with us. So I'm going to let you jump in there, Mary, and just start where you want to, and I'll jump in when I have a question.
Okay.
Okay?
Although lavender is not considered a cooking herb, you can use it in cooking. And by the way, the herb de Provence has lavender in it, the French seasoning. Anyhow, the first thing I want to tell you, whether you are growing herbs for your kitchen garden or for lavender, you need a sunny, well-drained area. And by the way, lavender is drought resistant, and it does very well in this cold weather. In the wintertime, it's a nice gray plant. But in the summertime, when you are harvesting lavender, your bush will be big blue or dark blue. It comes in different colors. You wait until the first little flowers open, and then you cut it, and then you can dry it like this. This is an old vase. This has been about 5 years old. So you can see if you dry things properly, whether you're doing kitchen herbs or your lavender, if you dry them properly out of bright light and in a cool or a cool room will do. But you don't want bright light.
In the summer?
I harvested this in the summer, and I had it in baskets on my porch, and I cover it with newspaper because the porch is very bright. In the summertime, I have the blinds drawn to keep it more cool. But in the wintertime, I take the blinds up so that it warms the porch because the sun comes in all day. So at that point, I cover it with newspaper to keep it dark. And then I bring it in the house for a day and warm it, and then I strip it. This jar, it looks like a lot or it doesn't look like a lot, but this actually took me 2 days to harvest, and it took me a day to strip. So you really don't get an awful lot of it, but what you get is very rewarding because it's very, very fragrant, and you can use it in so many ways. First of all, if you've got nothing else to do on a nice sunny day, you can sit in your garden and make a lavender wand. This has to be done while the lavender is first cut because you have to be able to bend the branches. The flowers are actually in here. And you bend the stems down over the flowers, and then you weave pretty ribbons around it. See, we've got various ones, and you can do all kinds of decorative things with them, and it smells wonderful. And after a year, if you think it's lost its fragrance, you squeeze it because the fragrance is still there. There's little cells in there with oil that are dried up, and the same applies to all your herbs. If you take a dried leaf of herb and you break it up, you will still get the fragrance later because the cells have the oil in them, and you release it by squeezing. You see?
I never saw these before today. Now, I thought I was around the block enough in my life, you know. What did we knock over? Something? Okay. But I just find I'm just infatuated with them. I just think they're great. I think you beat people with them, or you can fan yourself.
With them,
and
yes.
It smells really good. And here's one. It's
now, I'll
shorter.
tell you the difference here. There's different kinds of lavender. This is your English lavender, or when you're buying lavender, you have to read the tag, and if it says angustifolia, which really isn't hard to say, it's just getting used to seeing it on the tag, that is considered English lavender. Well, the stems aren't as long, so you get a nice little one. These are great for your bureau drawers. Then we've got the lavandin, which is really long. I've cut off that much stem to make this because I have to store them, and sometimes I do leave the stems longer and decorate them when I want to give it as a gift. But the lavandin is a cross between the English lavender and this latifolia, which grows wild in the Mediterranean. Now, the English lavender blooms like in June, early July, but the latifolia blooms later. So what they did, they crossed them. The latifolia also has a longer stem. So they came up with this lavandin, and they call it Provence or Grosso. There's names like that you'll see on the tags. which means that the leaf is a little larger. Like on the English lavender, you've got a tiny little leaf up the stem, but the lavender has a larger sword-like leaf. Well, it also has these wonderful, like 20-inch stems, which make wonderful wands because you've got room to work, and and you have more area to put pretty ribbons on.
You told me about a summer you made 100 of these?
The year that last year, my mother's life, she couldn't be left alone, and I stayed on my porch that summer, and I made over 100 of them. But my youngest son was married that fall, so I had them for favors and gifts, and it was really nice to have them. But this is something that is not, it's kind of tedious to make, especially after a while. You don't want to make too many. But because you have to work with all these stems hanging out and weaving, it takes a little getting used to working it. But it's a very nice thing to have around, and people like them, you know.
It
You
smells
put them in
great.
bureau drawers. I stick them behind pictures, and sometimes I have a vase full of them. It makes a nice centerpiece, you know. Also, about drying lavender here, you see lavender dries very stiff. It's really stiff. I'm always picking up bird feathers. Well, anyhow, because it dries this way, you want to hang it upside down to dry. But then when it's dry, you can turn it up. You can fill up baskets with it. You can fill up vases with it, and see, it stays nice and stiff. You can decorate it with ribbons, various things. Same with this now. After I make one of these, I hang it upside down to finish drying so that the stems will stay straight, okay?
This kind of arrangement, or one of these, is wonderful in the bedroom, because isn't lavender supposed to be a soothing sleep?
Well, now
agent?
you can make sleep pillows. And
Oh.
what I do with sleep pillows, you put the lavender in, and you make a pillow so big, because you're not going to actually sleep on it because it's not that big, and you can't put that much lavender in it. But you put
can't afford
lavender in
to.
it, and then I use flaxseed, which I've mixed with this lavender, because the flaxseed gives it weight. And then you put them in the pillow, and I put a ribbon on it so it'll hang on the bedstead at night. But you can put it on your pillow in the morning. When you make up your bed, you put it on your pillow. Then when you go to bed at night, you've got the fragrance. And lavender is the only herb that they can say it soothes you and it stimulates you. When you want to take a nap, you can make an eye pillow the same way, only make it big enough to go over your eyes. And using the flaxseed, it gives it weight to stay on your eyes. If you put it on your eyes and you lay down, take a nap, it'll relax you. However, there's an old story that the students used to put it in their hat because they had a study, and it stimulated their brain. So whether or not, I think it's all a matter of what you believe and what you like.
How did you get the name of Lavender Lady?
I don't know. It's because I grow so much of it. I do.
Good reason,
We call our place Lavender Hedge. And, well, at one point, I was growing 150 different herbs. And one day I stopped and I thought, it's a lot of work. I've got all these herbs I don't even like, and they were a lot of work to keep. So I decided to cut down to just what I like. And I love lavender, and I always liked lavender, because when I was a kid, we would get Old English lavender soap for Christmas, which was a real treat, you know?
Yeah.
And that was a real treat, so that made it important. So I grow lavender up the driveway, and I've got hedges of it in the back, and a kitchen garden, because I do like to use certain herbs in my kitchen. So that's where I cut down. And because I grow so much lavender and started doing talks on it and making things with it, another thing I do, I take silk ribbon and embroider fabric, then make pretty bags.
They
that
are
I
gorgeous.
put lavender in. Can you see that, hon? This is my rosemary plant. I cut this 2 days ago, and it's still going pretty good in spite of all of that cold weather out
You
there.
told me that was growing outside.
This is growing
As
outside.
opposed to this bunch.
This here was growing on my porch in a pot.
inside.
This is growing inside in the porch. And you can see the one outside is growing it's much bushier, bigger, because it's in the ground and it can get the nutrients out of the ground, which when you grow things in pots, you have to occasionally feed them, you know. And they grow more compact in a pot because you can keep it cut.
Do I understand correctly, this book about lavender features your garden?
It has my garden in it, yes. It's a book by Stackpole Publishers. They publish textbooks, and they did this book on lavender, and I don't know whether this is available anymore.
I don't know, but I
it's
want to
a
tell
couple
you, I
years-
want to come live here.
There are a number of good books on lavender.
And it's not that far away, everybody. We can all visit.
Right. I do a garden tour sometimes. I used to do a lot of it, and people come and have lectures at my garden. But anymore, I just do it if somebody calls. By the way, you can make up tiny little bags like this. You can stick them in your handbag, in your pocket. Sometimes I have them in a pocket. Or you can put it in a bureau drawer, or where you're sitting by the phone. And if you're talking on the phone, you're on there a long time, and you don't have something to doodle with, you can always play with your bag of lavender. Keep you awake.
Like a worry stone, you know, a worry bag.
Right. And another thing you can do with it, which I do a lot of, especially if I have a tea, I always put this out. This is lavender sugar. You take like a cup of sugar and you take a quarter cup of lavender flowers and you put them in a jar and let them sit for a couple weeks and shake it up every now and then. Now what I do after that is put it in a coffee mill, a little at a time, because when you grind sugar, it gets powdery and can go everywhere. So I do a little at a time and I grind it, and then when you put this in tea, it melts. It's like instant sugar. But you've got a nice lavender flavor, and people like to use that when you're having tea.
You know what also is good, the sugar, the flavored sugar, is lemon or vanilla. The vanilla bean sugar.
Vanilla bean. Oh, my regular sugar bowl has lavender, has vanilla bean in it. And one time, my daughter's husband read where that the vanilla bean is an aphrodisiac, and he said to my daughter, "Oh, we're going to have to get some of that for the sugar." She said, "Every time you have tea at my mother's, you've got it," because I always have it in my sugar. So anyhow, by the way, there's just one more thing here. Now, I don't take baths anymore because I can't get out of the tub, but I do take showers, you know. But anyhow, this you can make for your bathroom. And what I do with it sometimes is just open it for the fragrance. But this is bath salts, and it has in it Epsom salts, baking soda, and a lavender oil. And that's all that's in it. But anyhow, when you open it up, it smells real good.
And you know what?
Now,
Even if
this
you
is
don't
old.
get baths, and if you want to soak your feet when you're tired some night,
true.
at least it'll smell good, it'll heat up.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
So anyhow, but it looks pretty in the bathroom. Something else you can do, but there is something I want to mention here. If you're putting anything in your bathroom, don't put it in glass in case it should drop. Find a pretty plastic container for it. This is only for demonstration. I used to make a lavender hair rinse, which is vinegar with lavender, and then I would put it in plastic bottles to take into the bathroom. Because when I was a kid, a long time ago, we didn't have conditioners. So what we did to make sure that the soap was out of our hair was use vinegar.
I thought it was beer.
Well, we weren't that wealthy.
Oh,
We
you
used
didn't even
vinegar.
have beer. Okay.
Anyhow, we used vinegar. So anyhow, I would make the lavender vinegar and I would give it as gifts. And I had actually family come back and ask me for more because they liked using it. But you make sure that it's in a plastic bottle so that you don't have an accident, have it break, you know. I just want to mention that these, all these cuttings here, this is my bay tree. It's on the porch, and it's surviving. And this is an old one. They've been cut like since the spring, but this is dried, so you can put it in your cooking.
Now, you mentioned about make sure when you use bay leaf to put it in whole and to fish it out before you serve the dish.
That's right.
Because when this gets wet, it can stick to the top of the throat and choke you to death. And you don't want to be death by food, you know. But these are really, really nice.
It is nice. But also, when you about growing lavender, if you have lavender plants, don't mulch around them with this beautiful mulch you see in the gardens. Gardens look nice that way, but it's not always good for plants. You can create a bad situation of mold or other diseases by giving them an environment that is not true to their nature.
I have a question. Can you grow lavender in the house? I mean, in pots, or is it?
You can. How I how I feel about that. All winter you have to baby it and water it. So I like to have the kind of things that I can put in the ground and leave there. These big pots that I have on the porch, I only water about once a month. But because in the wintertime they don't need as much, but I water them thoroughly once a month.
Well, you know, when you don't have any, I don't have an inch of dirt to garden outside of the walls of my apartment. And I'm always trying something, and it always lasts about an hour and a half, and then it dies, and I get
It's difficult to grow indoors.
I actually treat garden plants, you know, you buy from the house, like cut flowers. In 2 weeks, it's time to throw them away because they're already dead.
You either overwater or underwater.
No, I don't know. I'm told it's the atmosphere of where I live is the problem, not how I handle it.
But I do want to tell you that if you want to, and it's a good idea to mulch your lavender plants with builder sand. Don't use the kind that comes out of off the ocean because it's got salt in it. But the builder sand, if you make an area around the base of your lavender plant, about a foot, or maybe not even quite that far, but give it a little depth around the plant. There's several things it'll do. The sand will work its way into the soil, which will keep it nice and loose, and it will, all day the sun is on your plant if you're in a sunny location, and if you're not, whenever the sun is there, it will warm the sand, and then it will send the heat will go up through the plant from the sand, the heat of the sand, and will reduce the chance of having a mold, because the mold is created by damp.
That's one of the, mold and all kinds of problems with plants come from the soil. Everyone thinks it doesn't matter, but it really does matter. That's important.
Well,
what's this little bottle here?
That's lavender water I bought down in Williamsburg years ago. Smell it. It still smells good.
Hey, this lasts forever.
It does. It's wonderful.
Except it stops at my nose a little.
It's supposed to open up your head.
Well, I think with this much at one time.
Okay, listen, time is growing short, so I want to tell you very quickly that a kitchen garden, everybody who cooks should have a kitchen garden if they have a space. You don't need a lot of space, because the plants that you would put in a kitchen garden are the ones that you would use. Like if you use basil and oregano and thyme, rosemary. Well, rosemary you would put in a pot in this climate and have it in your or by your herb garden, right? And chives, of course, because you always use onion, or most people use onion in cooking. Just put a plant of each in an area and give them a little room, because they will spread out all over. And then when you are cooking and the pot's boiling and you think, ooh, this thing needs something, you go out and you clip some herbs, put them in a little bag of cheesecloth. You make your own little bag, cut a square, and then take some white thread and tie it up, okay? And then you throw it in the pot, and it seasons, and then you take it out before you serve.
We're laughing because we heard a story.
Yeah, we had an
She
experience
served
where
her
I couldn't
son
find
instead
it.
of me a little herb pouch.
I couldn't find it. Well, anyhow.
In fact, we were talking about basil. I think I've said this 102 times. If they made basil into perfume, I'd wear it. I just love the taste, the smell, everything about basil. And my favorite salad is tomatoes, mozzarella cheese, basil, and oil. I could eat it every meal.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you grow chives, you'll be rewarded in the early spring with a beautiful blue globe.
Oh, yeah.
And if you put that in vinegar, now you can use plain white vinegar, it'll turn a pretty shade of pink. If you use that apple vinegar, cider vinegar.
I would only use white vinegar. I'm into vinegars, as you all know. We talked about this for a long time. Lavender makes the greatest colored vinegar.
Oh, it's almost red.
And so fast. I would not use any other color but white, or the lightest yellow, not even light yellow, because that tends to interfere with the color. It is, and you put a couple of the chive things in it, and a couple of bloom, if you can poke it in the bottle, depending on what kind of bottle.
That's right. Well, what I do, I use a wide mouth bottle, and I almost fill it with the flowers, put the vinegar over it. Then, and you shake that, you put it in the sun, and every day you would shake it up a bit, and then after about a week or two, you strain it into a a fancier bottle, and you've already got your vinegar.
I actually give it kickstart. I heat before I pour the vinegar. I heat it, and it.
Well, the sun does the same thing.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
it would do the same thing, but
Yeah.
some of us are more don't have the patience other of us may have.
Okay. Well,
Listen,
no,
before we go
that
on,
is the proper way to do it, to heat it. But see, I use the sun for the heat. So.
yeah. Before we go on, and we don't have any more time. I mean, we have time, but not. There's this thing called. There's a cookbook by the herb gatherers.
I'd like to talk about
and
this.
And I would like you to talk about that book.
This is important because this book is made up by people in our own area. They're herb growers, they are cooks, some wonderful, wonderful recipes. And the money that is made off of this book it goes to charitable causes and for beautifying the area. And we have supported gardens all over the area and various other organizations. What's really wonderful is that you get appetizers and beverages for afternoon tea, breads and butters, but what I think is the best part of this book, of course I'm prejudiced, is the chart. There's a herbal chart here. Oh, we've got all kinds of recipes on blends.
Well,
but
she's
there's
looking. I want to apologize if I keep bringing my tissue out. We're not cooking today, so we can do that because the smell is so wonderful, but it is opening up my sinuses.
Yeah, well, there is a herb chart in here which gives you all kinds of ideas how to use the herbs. But another interesting feature of this book is that on each index page, there is a picture of a herb. Now, here is dill on seafood. Okay, and then on the back of the picture, they've got a short history of the plant and how it's used. It's a wonderful book, and it is available, and it is a local number. And if you get in touch with Betty, she will talk to you about that.
At the end, there's the graphic with the address and the phone number and all. If you call, I'll give you more information about this book, or I'll have you forward your name and your number to Mary so she can talk to you if you have any specific questions on lavender or any kind of herb grown. She knows about it all, trust me. She sort of, once in a while you'll say something, she lays back, but she knows about it all. And if she wants to admit it, she does. But this is a wonderful book. I know she is very proud of this book. Are you part of this?
And we have, these recipes are also taste tested. We used to have a celebration of herbs before everybody in the world started selling herbs. We would have a herb sale in May, and we would have like a little lunch and tea. And a lot of the recipes in there were used at that point, and people used to come just for our recipes or to have lunch with us. Then every I think October now, they may have changed the time now, there's a Victorian tea held locally, and they bring a speaker, and all the members of the club cook for this, and you get all kinds of wonderful things. Well, we've tried all these recipes. They've been taste tested at meetings. Like every time we have a meeting, of course, we have a lot of herbal food.
You have to try food. I mean, you have to try it.
So I mean, it's good that way.
If anyone's interested, I have a cookie that has lavender in it that I had gotten at some seminar, some workshop, I forgot where. And if I was just mentioning early to Mary's daughter, Mary, I think they call her Mitzi.
Mary.
That when you eat one, you go, oh, it's not bad. Well, by the time you eat your 9th cookie, you're addicted to these things and you want more. And of course, this Mary goes, 9 cookies. And the other Mary and I are going, yeah, 9 cookies. But it's very versatile, and it's really, really good as a perfume, as an aromatic. Or
May I interrupt you for a moment here?
Sure.
If you are going to cook with lavender or with any herb, do not use too much. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. If it calls for a teaspoon of lavender and you're supposed to break it up, measure first and then break up. Because if you break it up and measure, you're going to get more. You're going to use more. And you can overpower your food with herbs and with your lavender. So you really want to be very careful how you use it. Start out with a little bit and build up. Maybe the next time you make it, you'll put a little more. Or maybe the next time you'll put a little less.
The other thing that I want to mention, because I just learned this in the last couple of years, or 10 years, I don't know how many, You know the word herb and you know the word herb. Well, for years, these things were herbs. Now they're herbs.
It depends on who you're
Because
talking to.
it depends on who you're talking to and where you're from and the origins. I know isn't it, it's the herb garden of England or something, or herb growers of England or something.
Right.
That's the first time I heard it, and I'm going to someone, they're saying it wrong. And
No,
someone, no, they're not. They're
No, they're
saying
not.
it right.
You know,
So is that all it is?
No, I always remember them saying that the lower class people drop their H's in English. In England, if it's somebody from the slums, they would drop their H's. Well, why would somebody who is educated and working with herbs call it an herb? When I call it a herb, I don't care what it, I mean, it's like tomato and tomato. You call it what you want, I'll call it what I want. And I call it a herb.
Yeah. Well, I've been finding I alternate now. Depends who I'm talking to. I talk to Mary and I say herbs. I talk to my mother and I say herbs. I mean, you know, I'm getting there. I'm just alternating.
Yeah,
things.
we're having a good time.
Yeah, it's a
No matter what you call it, use them, grow them. They're wonderful. Just don't overwater.
Overuse them, like you said. It can
Yes,
be
yes,
it can
true.
be terrible.
But when you're growing them, also herbs. You know, Adelma Simmons was the guru of herb gardening. She died a couple of years ago. She was a very old woman. She wrote many, many books. And that when she first started in 1927, she had this farm in Connecticut, and she was growing all kinds of flowers. Then they had a 7-year drought. And what she found out was the only things that survived the drought were the herbs. So the moral of the story is she started growing herbs. Don't overwater your herbs because you can kill them. You know, when you withhold water, they get a stronger scent. And when you're going to harvest them, try to harvest them right before they blossom, because the oils are all in the plant then and not in the flowers, you know?
Yeah.
And also you want to harvest them in the morning before the sun is high in the sky, because the oils come up into the plant, and then when the sun starts to go down, the oils go down. So it's best to harvest them in the morning.
But you told me you harvest them whenever you need them.
I do. Well, they still have good flavor. But
Yeah.
these are things they tell you to do.
Oh,
when you're working in your garden, you do what you can.
Is this the rules? Who made the rules?
I don't know.
No?
I don't know who made the rules.
Everybody
but
makes
this is
their
what
own.
they tell you to do.
Okay.
And if you're going to cut them, never cut more than half of the plant. You know, like never cut down more than half, because it needs.
Yeah, how would you do that? Just say you have a bad
Well,
rosemary tree. Could you cut it to the?
Oh, you can if you're trying to save it, yeah.
Yeah.
But see, you can go along. Now this was a real long branch, because this is a big bush in my garden. But actually, if your bush is smaller, you would just cut like that. You know, you have to leave something for the plant to rejuvenate itself, because after all, it feeds itself through its stems, its leaves, you know.
I don't know, Mary. I think we could go on forever. Look at this one. This is great Christmas, red and green. But I think we're going to have to call it quits for now, because it's the time. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I actually never. I met Mary over the telephone. We can't decide who suggested her to me. I just remember I show you the paper.
Yeah.
Someone wrote your name and your number and said, "Get in touch with the Lavender lady." And I said, "I will," but took me a little while, but I did get in touch, and I'm very, very glad that I did. It was nice to have met you.
Nice being here, and thank you for having me.
And you'll be back, I'm sure. Now remember, if you want to know anything, call the number or write to the graphic that you'll be seeing at the end of this. So this is Bette Banjack and Mary Vogel for Look Who's Cooking. See you soon. Bye now.
Goodbye now.